Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here, bringing you a video about a recent announcement made by the Academy that has been a little controversial, blown out of proportion by many, and I want to give a measured take on it. The Academy announced some standards that they're going to require films meet in order to qualify for the Best Picture award. This actually applies to no other categories other than Best Picture. The intention of these standards is to help increase diversity in Hollywood among basically people who are not straight, white, able men. Because as we know, they do dominate Hollywood, they do dominate the industry, and they have for a long time. Things have been improving. We've seen more female directors, more filmmakers of color, more people of color in front of the screen in blockbusters in recent years. The Oscars have also been increasing the amount of women and people of color that they accept into the Academy to be voters, which is a move that I definitely agree with because the Academy statistics are overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly male, and I think their goal should be to represent the population. But this move kind of crosses a line for many people, and I'm not really sure if it crosses a line for me, actually. So now they're actually trying to make change happen behind the scenes. So in some people's minds, it kind of oversteps their role as a committee who just kind of sits back and judges the films. Many people are reacting and saying this is like the death of the Oscars. This is going to change everything. Oh my God, they're not going to be able to nominate movies like 1917. That is not true either, because this set of standards is a pretty extraordinarily low bar. It's probably not going to change anything, and I honestly think that it's almost meant to not change anything. It's kind of meant as a statement. They want to say that they're striving for diversity, but I'm not sure that this will really affect that much. Let's take a look at what this actually says, what the rules actually are. There are 4 standards that the Academy has established, and movies only have to meet 2 of 4 of them. That is an important detail. This is going to begin with the 2024 Oscars, so it's actually not happening for a few years. The reason is probably there's not going to be an excuse that they didn't know. They have plenty of time before any of this happens. Standard A is about on-screen representation, themes, and narratives. A lot of people will kind of clip out this segment and say, if your movie doesn't have actors of color or women or gay characters, then you can't qualify for Best Picture anymore. Now, that's not true because you don't have to meet Standard A. Very important thing. A lot of people are missing this. And to achieve Standard A, the movies only have to fit 1 of 3 of these criteria. They do not have to fit all of them. At least one of the lead actors or significant supporting actors is from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. 2 is at least 30% of all actors in secondary and more minor roles are from at least 2 of the following underrepresented groups. This group, women, people of color, gays, and disabled people. I did the math here. For the general population of the United States, this is 75% of the population. So if 75% of the population comprises of 30% at a minimum of your characters, then you meet this goal. The 3rd is around the main storyline and subject matter. The main storyline's theme or narrative of the film is centered on an underrepresented group. So this basically means if you have like a female protagonist, you're in. If this was like the only quota, I would definitely be against it, because obviously we don't want to make filmmakers include people in their stories who might not need to be there. For example, 1917 is a true story. It's about white men who fought in war. It is based on the reality that a lot of white men fought in war. It wouldn't make sense for them to cram diversity into that movie. The Irishman probably wouldn't have met these criteria. And Ford v. Ferrari is also very questionable. But again, you don't have to meet this criteria in order to qualify for the Oscars. The second standard is a fucking slam dunk. Any movie that is produced in this decade and on is going to meet this standard. At least 2 of the following creative leadership positions and department heads, makeup artists, costume designers, production designers, cinematographers, all that stuff, producers. At least 2 of them have to be women, people with disabilities, people from a diverse racial group, or gay people. This is super fucking easy to meet. For example, 1917. A woman wrote it. There's a woman casting director. There's probably women in other roles. The Irishman, there's a female editor, female costume designer. You're done. That's it. That's all you need to do. That's a minimum. If all these positions were headed by like straight, white, cis men, that would be like strange. That would be like you're trying really hard to do that because, as I said, that's like 25% of the population. So this is like a super low bar. But even if you don't meet that, you can meet B2 or B3. B2 is at least 6 other crew members and technical positions are from an underrepresented or ethnic group. These positions can include first AD, gaffer, script supervisor. This only applies to racial and ethnic groups. Again, this is probably not very hard if you have a large production with a lot of people. It would be surprising if you didn't meet this. Overall crew composition, at least 30% of the film's crew is, again, 75% of the population. This is a very low bar to meet. The only thing that I would be concerned about is like, what if you have an indie film that's made by very few people? It would be a little harder to qualify in some of these categories, but I still think that that's very easy. I mean, I would be surprised if any movie doesn't meet Standard B. Standard C, industry access and opportunities. To achieve Standard C, the film must meet both criteria below. Major studios and distributors are required to have substantive ongoing paid internships, inclusive of underrepresented groups, in most of the following departments. I'm not really sure what most means, but the mini-major or independent studios, so they're actually kind of are addressing like independent studios who have less people, have to have a minimum of 2 apprentices or interns from the above groups in at least one of the following departments. So if you have 2 interns that aren't straight white male, you're good, I guess. I don't know for sure, but I would assume that it's pretty common for major studios to have internships and apprenticeships in a lot of these programs as it is. So again, I don't know what this is going to make studios actually have to stretch a little bit in order to make this happen. I mean, you probably don't even need to pay them because it's an internship, right? So is this even out of the way for anybody? And Standard D is audience development. The studio and or film company must have multiple in-house senior executives from, that same group of underrepresented people. Multiple means 2. So I guess if you have 2 senior executives in any position in either your marketing, publicity, or distribution teams, then you're good. This also seems like it's probably easy. I don't think that we need to get ourselves into a tizzy about this stuff because ultimately not a lot is actually going to change here. I think the Oscars want to avoid anything like, Dunkirk 2 is not qualified for Best Picture because that wouldn't look good on them. I think these rules are intentionally very easy to meet. And that also is kind of conflicting because it's like, if it's so easy to meet them, then is it really doing anything? And would I want it to be more? Because if it was more difficult to meet them, then would it be too much like interference in a way? I think that the internship and apprentice programs are really good ideas. My only conflict is like, should the Oscars be forcing them to do it? At most, studios are only going to have to do a very slight adjustment to meet these needs. It's basically just like having a few women and people of color and people who are gay in the room. This should not be difficult. The majority of people fit under one of these underrepresented categories. I would definitely be opposed if the rules meant that movies like 1917 and The Irishman couldn't be qualified for Best Picture, but that's not the case. Again, I think that there are good ideas in here. It's just, should the Oscars be the one to do it? On the other hand, the Oscars are deciding to step up because maybe the studios aren't. I don't have the most experience within the film industry to tell you what kind of practices go on behind closed doors, but I mean, it's kind of known that up until like Black Panther, which was 2 years ago, Hollywood was unsure if they should put minorities in the leads of giant movies. These problems are not over. If Hollywood is not reflecting the population, then that kind of means there's something wrong with Hollywood. Especially in more technical departments like cinematography and directing, there is like a massive disparity. And as this disparity has shrunk in the past decade, I think we've gotten a lot of really special films out of it. There are some people who are really happy to see the Oscars take this step. They think it's a step in the right direction. I sympathize with that viewpoint. I also sort of sympathize with like, is this the role of the Oscars? I definitely agree with them diversifying their membership. Should they have any criteria, whatsoever about what studios need to do to qualify? That I'm a little more torn on. But again, not the death of the Oscars. Probably not going to affect anything. And if a studio doesn't meet these requirements, it's a little ridiculous. Would like to hear your opinions. Would like to know your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. How diverse are you?